RM Sotheby's is the world's largest collector car auction house by total sales. They are the preeminent market maker of high-quality collector cars and collections, regardless of size or complexity. By working in partnership with the Sotheby's team and its network of 80 offices in 40 countries, RM Sotheby's has established the largest client network of any collector car auction house in the world. Join the RM Sotheby's family by connecting with one of their car specialists at rmsotheby's.com or contact me directly at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com. All right, welcome to another episode of the Collector Car Podcast. I'm super thrilled to have my next guest on because I've known him for years. I've known he's a talented individual, and I had to find reasons to have him on the podcast. So I'd like to welcome Tom Osborne. Tom, how are you?
Charming as usual. How are you?
A little less so, but I do my best. So the reason I have not had you on the podcast before is because I'm trying to figure out, you've dealt with everybody's favorite Star Wars vehicle design in the past. And I'm like, all right, how can I make the jump from Star Wars to collector cars? And I think we did it. So I know there's everybody my age is a huge Star Wars fan, generational impact. And I actually, as we're recording this in my office on my wall, I've got my old toys from a kid. I have my X-Wing that looks horrible up there. I've got some cups or glasses from Burger King when they did this giveaway. I even have an autographed picture from Darth Vader. And I don't think it was really Darth Vader because
David Prowse, huh? That's who played the part.
It was David Prowse, actually. But it says best wishes. I'm like, I don't think Darth Vader would wish anyone best wishes.
Well,
So anyways, thank you for being on the podcast. If you would, tell us a little bit of your history around the Star Wars franchise, which goes back to the very first days.
well, I went to the University of Cincinnati, DAP, which is Design, Architecture, Art, and Planning. I majored in industrial design, wanted to be a car designer, still do. And they have a co-op program that you have to do. It's part of the 5-year program there. That I started my first 3 co-ops at Kenner, which was a big toy company here in Cincinnati at the time. They've been consumed by Hasbro now. But they made, in the course of when I was there, made such things as Easy Bake Oven, Spirograph, and Baby Alive, and then Star Wars and SSPs, which were little T-stick pull cars that were pretty cool. Ghostbusters, Strawberry Shortcake Care Bears, and then Star Wars. And I started there after I graduated from UC. I started in January of '76 in the concept group as an industrial designer, product designer, coming up with ideas and working on submissions that inventors would send to us and the theaters would send to us. And in about January, maybe February of 1977, we received a script about a movie called Star Wars that was coming out in May, like 3 months later. And it was the most toyetic thing we'd ever seen. The most, every page was another toy.
Is that a real word, toyetic?
Yeah, it is inside the business, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Toyetic.
Yes, that means there's a lot of opportunities to sell toys, a lot of product that you can come up with inside, because like I said, there was, everything was a toy in that movie. So one of my guy I worked with at Kenner, who eventually was a business partner, Jim Swearingen, he kind of knew of it beforehand and was aware of George Lucas and aware that his thesis for when he graduated from film school was a thing called THX 1138, which was a cult film. And a little bit of trivia, if you go to American Graffiti, the yellow 32 Ford that Han Solo drove in there, the license plate was THX 1138. So,
thank you for working in an old car into this podcast. That makes it justifiable.
Yeah.
But real quick, you said it's toyetic. Is that right? Is that the right word?
Yes.
Do you think George made it that way without the merchandising rights, or do you think he amped it up once he had the toy and merchandising rights?
No, I think he made it that way. it was based on a lot of like the swashbuckling pirates. Who was the? There was a who was the? I can't think of
Flash
it.
Gordon.
Flash Gordon, right? Yeah, and then there were several. It became a mesh of several different concepts or things that had been out there for a while, and so we read the script. When Kenner got it, every toy company in America had turned it down.
What?
Yes, because here we got this. First of all, toys for movies generally didn't do very well historically. We were making $6 Million Man at that time, which was a TV show, and it was a big figure, 12-inch figure, and so companies kind of went away from it a little bit, but really Jim Swearingen, a few others, myself and Mark Boudreau, and some other designers that were all graduates from UC Industrial Design Program, which I now am an adjunct. As a matter of fact, I teach there. We all kind of loved this thing. You know, it was just like unbelievable. So we were very positive, and Jim was the champion inside the company. And originally the line was going to be a Star Wars or an X-Wing fighter and 4 figures. And the problem was that was May when we actually signed a contract. The movie came out May 27th, 1977. And we could not get toys done in time for Christmas. It takes probably about a year from once you start doing something and then making the patterns and the tooling, getting the approvals from everybody, and then make a bunch of them. For toy business, you have to have all your toys for Christmas on the shelves in the 1st of September, basically. And no way we're going to do that.
And you're talking more of the larger toys, not the figurines?
No, the figures too, anything.
Oh, the figures too, okay.
Right. So somebody at the company, and there's a bit of a argument of who came up with it, decided that we could make a bunch of stuff that was paper, like coloring books and other things, games, and we would sell them a box. They'd be able to get a box. Kids could get this package, and there was all these little paper items and things in there, and toy games and things, but nothing of hard plastic. But there was a little coupon in there saying in February you're going to get your 4 figures in the mail. And that never been done before, and that is kind of the iconic thing about this whole toy line. Was it started with a promise to mail the thing. So, and we did that, but I can remember that was originally going to be the line was the X-Wing and 4 figure. I think it was Darth, Leia, C-3PO maybe, and Luke, and I can remember very well. We'd have product conference where the marketing people and the president, Joe Mendelson, and others would get in there, and we'd show them the new product once a week. We would show them what we come up with for product, what the inventors had sent in, and we showed them Star Wars. And on this particular day, it was May 25th, and somebody brought in the Time magazine that had Darth Vader on the cover that day. And that kind of like everything just took off like crazy then, and it was a lot of fun. I was 25 years old then and presenting to George Lucas, and really discussing one-on-one with him how this product worked and all that thing. And he was really in tune with the designers more so than the marketing people and the business end of it. But he made more money on the toys than he did on the movies initially. So it took off from there.
Real quick, there was a decision to go from 12-inch like GI or $6 Million Man to what is it, 3.5-inch? Like that was a Kenner thing, right?
Well, yeah, because the movie had such vehicle presence to it. I mean, you had TIE Fighters, X-Wings, Land Speeder, your favorite, the Snow Speeder, AT-AT, and you couldn't make those for 12-inch figures. The things would be huge. It cost several $100s. So Jim Swearingen, and this is all documented in the Toys That Made Us. If anybody wants to watch that, the first edition of that, And if you go to 27 minutes and 27 seconds, I'm in there.
Hey.
But that's it. But at the time, Fisher Price was making figures about that size that were called Little People or something. So we would get them and carve them up and change them from I don't know, whatever it was, a farmer guy into C-3PO or George or Darth Vader or whoever. We'd mock them up out of whatever we could find. And one of the stories is my boss, Dave Okada, who was a great guy to work for. He's still with us out in L.A. For the little Jawas, he actually took a pair of his socks and cut them up to make the garb that went around them. So we used anything and everything that we could find to mock these up, and in addition to renderings that we would do, marker renderings saying, here's the features of the toy. We call those out and saying, it does this, it does this, it does this. Some of them we actually have work, like I remember the X-Wing fighter, the rendering of it had a little cutout with a red LED in the nose and a little motor in the back that made noise, and said, when you press this button, it's going to do this, and it helps the marketing people understand what we're talking about, because sometimes they were not they weren't kids, I don't think, ever, so they didn't get the connection sometime with the play features. But then everything took off. The movie was a first run for 14 months, I think. So that means it was in whatever it was in Showcase Cinemas or whatever for 14 months straight. Nowadays with Netflix, you're lucky to make 14 days. But it was there for 14 months straight. And the rest is history. It was.
Yeah, I remember. So real quick, in my office here, and I'll overlay a picture, but I've got my Star Wars figurines, some of them on the wall here, like on a little ledge. I got Darth Vader, Chewbacca, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Jawas, Stormtrooper Han Solo, and Luke actually fell off and he's behind my desk. I got to go get Luke. He's gathering dust back there. Yeah. But I remember seeing Star Wars. It was a funny situation because I was only like 6 at the time.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. I hate that.
No, sorry. And it's in Jacksonville, Florida. They had the Jacksonville Science Museum, whatever it's called, like right downtown. Great. And they would do you had the planetarium. So as a little kid, you could go in and watch the little laser show or whatever. And it must have been when Star Wars first came out, because they had displays set up with the action figures as you were waiting in line to go into the planetarium. And I remember seeing them thinking, oh, those are cool. And I remember my parents wanted to see it first to make sure it was safe for kids. And so at the time I saw the figurines, I was waiting for them to see it first before we could see it. And then I might have this not totally correct. It might be blurring with Close Encounters or something. But we went to a drive-in theater in our 78. I got to work a car into this situation here. Our 78 Econoline van, green and white. And my dad had us hide in the back under sleeping bags so he didn't have to pay for the kids to get in. And so we went to we're hiding underneath the sleeping bags, and we get into the drive-in theater and we watch Star Wars for the first time. And it's a vivid memory. Well,
I'll give you another automotive tie-in to it just to make it legal here. George Lucas wanted to be an Indy 500 driver. And of course, I did too. But I mean, I've crewed at Indianapolis before and been involved. This will be my 58th race this year. And I've been involved in a lot of aspects of the Indy 500. But that's what he wanted to do until one day he had a Fiat sports car of some sort. This would have been in the early 60s, maybe 62 or something. And he lived in Modesto, California. And he wrapped it around a telephone pole. And that kind of swayed him from being a race car driver. But there's pictures of this car online, and it's like, how did you get out of that? It looks like it looks like one of the cars from yesterday's Daytona 500. That flipped 4 or 5. It was a mess, and I don't know how he got out of it. I think he was hurt pretty good. But he wanted in doing initially when they designed some of the vehicles, he would tell him he wants some. Here's the theme I want. So like the Millennium Falcon was supposed to be a cheeseburger, flying cheeseburger. And I think it was the A wings that were supposed to be Formula One cars with the body panels removed and stuff like that. So he's a very much a car guy, and it was we kind of connected on that level a lot in talking to him. Very introverted, very quiet guy, but that's just another car connection to the movie.
Well, let's talk about the vehicle. So tell us, what was your role? So the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, because we have some pictures here I want to show up. And let's start with the snow speeder. So that's obviously from Empire Strikes Back, but what was your role at Kenner? And then how did you watch the film? Like, what did you take and how did you turn it into a toy?
Okay, so we would, like I said, we get scripts very early, but then we would start to get images, and we would make trips out to LA to the sound set or to Lucas Ranch or whatever to see what they were working on. And marketing would set a toy line for it with all the price points they wanted to hit, and we would sit down and figure, well, this vehicle could probably fit into $12.99, or this one could fit into $18.99. So then we would get images, and I remember that they would send us black and white pictures with big gouges out of them because they didn't want them to be reproduced. And a guy named Joe Johnstone did a lot of the industrial design on them, and he has a couple sketchbooks out that are pretty neat to have. But we would take them and then decide, hey, what could we do with this vehicle? And we would usually have a lot of features in it. Like with the snow speeder, you know, it has the firing cannons, and it has the grappling hook that comes off the back, and then there's a noise when they light up and stuff. So there's a lot of, and we would overpack the toy with features because we knew we could afford them all. So then they would start to decipher them, and we do the renderings like you have, showing what the features are. And then if marketing would like it, then we'd have it costed. We had a group that would cost the product and figure out, you know, can we make it at $12.99 and get the margins we want? And can we ship it on time and all that kind of stuff? So that was the whole process of taking something from the movie. We also did a few vehicles that weren't in the movie. And that was a guy named Mark Boudreau, who was another UC graduate, and he came up with the things called mini rigs, which were the thought there was they weren't on camera, but they were just off camera. We just, you know, they just didn't see them in the movie. So we did get to invent some of our own vehicles that would, you know, if we had a price point, we didn't have anything to fill it. Can we come up with something that might have been in the show that we can slide into that spot? And that's
now. Would that be the illustration you sent me with the number 5 on it, the single?
No, I don't. I didn't send you any mini rigs. No.
Okay.
Number 5 is just another vehicle that I don't even remember what that was from, but it could have been an attempt to do one of our own, because they would always say, you know, we'll put something in if we like it, but it almost never happened. That would happen with whoever we were dealing with, whether it was Ghostbusters or Beetlejuice or whoever the guy was that we were dealing with. They would always say, if we come up with something, but, you know, they really didn't happen much. But with Lucasfilm, I think it's the only place that actually happened where we came up with a toy that wasn't in the movie and it ended up being made.
So what would be an example of that?
The mini rigs, which were mini rigs.
Okay.
They're you can look them up. They were like almost like little without wheels, little motorcycles or little motorbikes that kind of.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah,
flew around. So, and there was about 4 or 5 different versions of that, and that's pretty much it. There were play sets and things like that. I think the Droid Factory, which was a thing where you got a bunch of parts for droids and you can make your own R2-D2 units that had different things happening on them, you know, different appendages and different tops and mix and match of parts and stuff like that. That was a really successful one. There was a troop transport, I think, which was a remote control vehicle that had pockets where you put the stormtroopers in the sides of it, which wasn't in the movie. So there was some opportunity there. But really, the X-wing TIE fighter and the Millennium Falcon was probably 75% of the vehicle business, something like that.
I have so many questions. All right, so let's go. While I have the picture up, what about the little single seat that has like the jet engine hanging from the bottom? Is that just for fun, conceptual design? The one you sent me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Right.
that's pretty cool. All right, so I have to ask these questions while they're in my brain here. Did you have anything to do with the Boba Fett firing rocket that was recalled?
Well, I was there for meetings with it. I didn't design it. That was another one of Jim's products. But the story is there that I should send you that picture of me walking Boba Fett around. We had the Boba Fett. Nobody knew what he was, of course. So he came to Kenner one day, full regalia, big gun and everything. And
was it all in white or was it painted costume?
No, he was a full costume. This looked like the movie costume. And we walked him downtown Cincinnati because we were in a Kroger building. And we walked him down around Fountain Square. He had this monstrous bazooka thing with him. Couldn't do it today, of course. But he came and we did all the photographing, and we took a lot of photographs of stuff when we would go out to the sets to look at what they were doing. But Boba Fett was supposed to bend over and he would fire a little missile that was about inch and a half long. There are some safety requirements when we do toys that we have some templates, 3D templates that replicate the throat of a kid.
Really?
Yeah, they're called swallow tubes. And there's some rules about that. And I think there was an incident with a Mattel item, had nothing to do with Star Wars. But we quickly realized that this might be a problem. So they decided to just glue in production, just glue the piece in. That was the simplest thing for, just take the spring out or don't put the spring in. And when they put them together, just drop some super glue on it or whatever and drop the missile in the backpack.
So was there someone in their office shooting this into that child tube?
Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting.
The tube itself was. Let's try and see if I got any. Oh, it's about here's some medicine. The tube thing is about this size, and it would be inside a block of plastic, and then it had a bevel down in the bottom here, and you put a part in there, and it could not. Any part of that part had to come past this top plane. If the part was totally engulfed in there, no good. So
if you have like a really good shot bullseye, you're like, geez, we gotta cancel this.
Well, the thing was pretty small to begin with. So anyways, it was determined but there were some figures as prototypes made. Now there's a lot of discrepancy about how many. There's a lot of fake ones out there. My recollection is there were 5. And Jim had a couple of these. One of them just sold. So maybe you should give up cars and go into the toy business. Yeah. Because one of them, I think one sold this spring for like $1.3 million.
Oh, ouch!
It was ridiculous for this big a figure. And I know we had some extra missiles around that we had molded, and I know that those sold for 20 years ago sold for like $3,000 a piece for about a half cent worth of polypropylene.
Right.
So, but there are a lot of fake ones around, and people claim they have them, and they don't really, and it's hard to tell which ones are real. And that, I had an incident where I had 3 boys and I have 4 grandsons, and I don't have a lot of good Star Wars stuff. I sold most of that, but we do have a box in the basement full of the toys, Star Wars stuff. And when the kids come over, they play with them. Well, I had a guy come up from Australia and wanted to see my stuff. Collectors from all over the world contact us all the time. They got a Kenner phone book, so they know everybody that worked at the company.
Yeah,
and they're very good at doing this. But he came up and I just said, I really don't have much here, but you can look through it. And he pulls out a TIE fighter pilot which was a black and gray figure, and it is all beat up. My kids are 40 years old now, so they played with it back then, and my grandkids played with it. It was all scuffed up. And he started looking at it. He says, "Well, there's no molded in copyright on the leg. There's on the inside of the thigh. Apparently, it's supposed to be." He says, "That means it's pre-production." He says, "I'll give you $1,000 for it."
Wow.
So sure. So, and the neat thing about this particular guy is that he bought a bunch of stuff from me, about $6,000 worth that day. And next day I get a call from him. He says, "I was looking up some of the value here. I really didn't give you enough. I put another $500 in your PayPal account." So,
nice.
Yeah. So I deal with him quite, whenever I can.
He's the guy you're going to call.
Yes. He's a great shooter. And
so I don't want to go down toy valuation trends or anything like that, but did you have anything to do with, like, I know like the Han Solo, there's a big head version that's worth more than the small head version. There's a Jawa where the cape is made of something that's worth more than one that's not. Were those just production line changes? Like, what caused his head to change size on Han Solo?
They probably molded it incorrect,
Okay.
We have, there's a character called Snaggletooth, I think.
Yeah.
He had like red boots or something, or blue, and then all of a sudden he has red. And then there's another issue with if you could dig out under your desk there with Han Solo. Yeah, that's those are there's some of those that were kind of. I'll tell you a story about that in a second. Anyway,
sorry, I'm just so you can see if you're watching. I got my old one with a bunch of random stuff in here.
But anyway, Snaggletooth, somewhere along the line, his shoes changed color, and there he is, or his feet or whatever. And people were asking us, "Well, why did you do that?" What was the reasons you did that? And it's like, well, because the factory probably ran out of that color and just changed it on their own. That's what happened with, there's different color hair on Luke Skywalker. And it's just, they say, why'd you decide to do that? Well, I don't know. It's probably just that the production people just made it a different color.
So if you have a keen eye, you probably noticed there was a couple non-Star Wars figurines in there, including the raisins.
Yeah. Not quite as
where to put them, so
not quite as collectible there.
Well, and also, this is a pretty cool thing. If you're ever at my house and you see the Darth Vader, I have my he's wearing my Concorso Italiano.
Oh, there you go.
Ferrari judging hat. So if you're ever in my office, you'll notice Darth Vader is wearing a
looks better than you do,
because I'll never wear this hat in public. So
little story about those. We made those the Star Wars the Vader version, and then we decided to do a C-3PO version. And the C-3PO, the C-3PO version is vacuum metallized. It's gold, shiny gold. So in the process of doing samples and figuring out how to do that, we vacuum metallized some Darth Vader ones. So there are Darth Vader ones that are gold, and those
would be cool.
Those are very collectible. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I occasionally do shows where I sell the drawings that I sent to you, and we do a panel and stuff, and I do a couple presentations, and people will give me $150 for one of my old Kenner business cards. So
I was going to bring that up. $150. Nobody gives me any money for my business card.
Yeah, but you're still having a good time. I'll tell you. This is like history. But it's none of us knew that this was going to happen. Or I'd have kept a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
Because we had opportunity there. There was an elevator. We're in the Kroger building, and I was on the 10th floor, 11th floor, and 12th floor, depending on what years. And freight elevator every day when engineers would get shots in from Asia, they would evaluate them and then throw them away. So there was a lot of stuff that just got tossed.
Yeah,
and it's just unbelievable, that happened.
Well, and I can also see why other toy companies didn't want anything to do with Star Wars, because consider the initial capital outlay to ramp up all these toys for what at the time was like just another space movie, right? I mean, you know, I mean, what was some of the other ones going on? Moonraker. I don't know. That's a James Bond, but I'm drawing a blank on it. But there was other stuff happening at the time that were just space movies that weren't that great, you know, that just didn't do anything. So Kenner really stepped up. So I do want to talk about vehicles a little more. So I pulled up the Imperial Star. Well, before that, the Snow
Speeder.
What's it called?
Snow
Yeah,
speeder.
the Snow Speeder. Now that does have a projectile that does shoot out the back, but it's probably what, larger than Boba Fett's, and
Yeah, it's larger or it does pass the whatever the thing was. Boba Fett's was pretty small, so
okay. If I remember right, I watched that first Star Wars making of special that came out like in the early '80s. It was after Empire Strikes Back because they showed how they did the stop motion on the Tauntauns. But I thought there was something said about when they started making stuff like the Star Destroyer or the Millennium Falcon, they just brought in a bunch of plastic model cars or whatever and just busted them apart and put all these parts together. Is that kind of how they started doing that?
yeah. Well, one of my hobbies is building 1/12 scale Formula One cars. This is a 6-wheel Tyrrell here that I'm working on.
Oh, nice.
And I remember if you go to the TIE Fighter, for example, it's got the wings on the side, and in the center of the wing, there's a round, like center point of the whole wing where everything comes off of, and those are wheels off of a Tamiya Matra Formula One car that they put in there. So it's a six-spoked wheel, and we used to get the. Well, there's a guy named Charlie Bailey who's also a UC graduate who built a lot of the models for Lucasfilm and for ILM. And we used to look at and figure out, oh yeah, that's a manifold off of something, or yeah, but that's the way it's called kit bashing, and that's what they would build the vehicles and put, basically styrene slabs, and then would add all these accoutrements. And instead of making each piece, they would buy hundreds of kits and just go and clip stuff off and modify it and stuff like that. So one of the things we did back then was look at these models and figure out what kits they're using, and then would kind of copy them in the real toy. So yeah.
Now, before I forget, you're going to be on the podcast again in another couple months to talk about your history with Indy. I know you do a lot of incredible sketches. I'm showing a few right now. So if you're enjoying this conversation with Tom, please subscribe, and Tom will be back on in a couple months, probably right before the Indy 500, to talk about his involvement with them. Awesome. Well, let's talk about the Imperial Star Destroyer. Sorry. I noticed you've got the Rebel Blockade Runner, Princess Leia's. What's her official name of that nowadays? Her ship.
I think that's it. Blockade Runner. Yeah.
It is. Okay. So you had to scale this. I mean, they never actually had that ship go up into it, though, right? They never had a version.
Well, I've seen if it was in here. I guess it's not. I thought it might be in here. That one is a die-cast one, so that's a huge ship. So we had to, any way we can make it so it's a very, very. It's probably about 10 or 12 inches, not even.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and there was just a little mock-up of the Star Destroyer or the Blockade Runner that went. There's a sliding door on the bottom there. You can see it on the rendering, and that piece went up in there, and there's a post, so it's stuck inside. So it was just a little slug of plastic that looked like the Blockade Runner. Okay.
Well, in the last vehicle from Star Wars we're going to talk about is one of my favorites, and it's a sad story, but it's the AT-AT, the AT-AT. You called it an AT-AT. I always call it AT-AT. Yeah. What's correct?
AT-AT. That's what we talked. That's what we used when we were talking to Lucas about them. So yeah, AT-AT.
Okay. Now, did you work on all three of the original trilogy?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is sad because my parents bought me this toy when I was a little kid, and it's such a great toy. I mean, it's 2 feet tall or so.
Well,
and I played with it.
The size of a dog.
Yeah. And then, I remember you would put your hand inside of it to actuate the head. And when my parents moved, when I was a teenager, it was in storage. One of the moving guys swiped it, which is really sad. So,
yes, it is.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about this. When you first saw it, what were your thoughts?
Well, read about it? Here's another automotive tie-in. There's a very famous industrial designer named Sid Mead.
Yeah, love Sid.
Okay, so And he did a series of he was like our god when I was in school, because he could draw like crazy. And he did a series for U.S. Steel, which were big renderings, gouache paintings of vehicles, and one of his is a close-up of they basically, Lucas knocked it off. It is the AT-AT. I mean, the legs and stuff and the pivoting design and everything of the feet is all identical. So I kind of knew of this, and we got pictures of the AT-AT in there. So it's Sid Mead's design, and so that was one I worked on from the day it came in, and did the first rendering of it, which that rendering you have is a facsimile of it. They're not the real ones, but it's the same as we would have done back then. And I mean, it was such a great looking thing, and the way it was, we would get clips of it walking, and maybe behind a blue screen or something, but just showing how it worked. It was so cool, his head looking around at people, and
Yeah.
when the snowspeeder came and lassoed him, it was kind of neat stuff. It was all just magic. So, but I always liked that vehicle quite a lot, and I liked the little two-legged Scout Walker also, which
those are cool.
Which you pressed in it looked like we call it a chicken, but next toy show I go to, if you want, I can pick you up an AT-AT for about $350, maybe something like that.
Oh, they're not as much as I thought they would be.
Well, yeah, they're pretty reasonable,
Yeah. So, all right, I need to ask this. I'm sorry, I'm out of order here because I do want to get back to the AT-AT. But while I'm thinking about it, you said you would get the script to the movie fairly early to see what the vehicles would be.
Yeah.
When you got the script to Empire Strikes Back, was the line, whatever the line is, Luke, I am your father, or whatever, was that in there?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
You don't remember?
I don't remember. No.
You're just worried about the vehicles.
funny thing about getting scripts. Once we did Star Wars and such a success, Kenner was the go-to company that all the studios wanted to go to first, because we proved that we could do it. And that's why Ivan Reitman came to us with Ghostbusters and Tim Burton with Beetlejuice and a few other ones. But one of the things that we looked at was Men in Black. And we got the script for that. We ended up not doing it. Somebody else did it, I guess. But several years later, maybe 4 years later, I'm with a client up in Chicago, and I decided to go see Men in Black, which just came out. And I'm watching the movie, and all of a sudden it's like deja vu. It's like, I knew that guy was going to say that. And then later it's like, I knew that was going to happen. And then I thought, oh yes, I read the script to this 4 years ago. So
you don't have ESP.
No.
So getting back to the AT-AT, how difficult is it to simplify the vehicles from what's going to be on screen to making it a toy? Because the AT-AT, what made me think about that is the guns on the side of the head. If I remember right, those were one piece molded that you just clipped on there.
Some of them were. They had two underneath, I think, that did this. Yeah.
So, how difficult was it to simplify it for toy production?
Well, first thing is scale, because it's it's not to scale with the figures. You have to take, because you got cost and packaging and all that stuff that comes into it. So it's really smaller than if you're doing a exact replica, and that was the case with a lot of them. The X-Wings were really much longer. The TIE Fighter wings were probably 3 times the size the toy ended up being. So there was always that kind of give and take, and that had to all be approved by Lucasfilm. But it's kind of accepted in the industry, that it's we're not to make, like, if I don't know who made the models. I think AMT made the model kits, the stuff, and those would have to be exact replicas, so to speak, in whatever scale they were. They weren't the scale of our figures, I think that they were like maybe this big wings on a TIE Fighter, but so the ball was maybe like this, and ours was, like this. but for model kits, it had to be closer. But for us, we always had what we call toyetic license. And that means we got this is not a replica, but it's a facsimile of the real vehicle. So we always had that in our back pockets. If they said, well, that's not right. I said, well, to make it right, we're going to have to double the package and triple the price. And the marketing people generally are okay with it. I mean, there was some arguments here and there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the AT-AT illustration, and you have a stormtrooper, snowtrooper, whatever you call it, for reference, for scale, and the AT-AT's probably 7, 8, figures high. But obviously, if you think back to the film, it was probably 20.
Yeah,
exactly. You had to scale it down more than half just to get it where it's feasible to produce, right?
Yes. Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay. Well, very cool. What else do we need to know about Star Wars vehicle design? I haven't asked you about it. Are there any like vehicles that were in the movie that you never were able to produce, or any strange, weird stories that are interesting that our listeners might want to hear about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we were trying to do as much Star Wars stuff as we could. I mean, everything that we could think of. So I think we went through every vehicle that was in there. I'm not sure that they all made it, but I can't think of one that didn't.
Okay.
Well, there was this one troop transport looked like a big slug or a big kind of like pill bug, I guess. And,
yeah.
That was one of mine that I worked on. And that actually became a carry case, because there wasn't many features with it other than it was big and we could make it look cool. And I've never seen one of those at any of these shows that I go to. So they might be pretty rare. I know
the Millennium Falcon, when that thing came out, that was a pretty big deal.
Oh, you got to see the pattern for that. The wood pattern is just it's a beautiful piece of art because it's made out of all different kind of woods and it just looks so neat. And that was what the pattern for and it's made, the pattern's 1.5 times the size of we pantographed it down to get detail. So it's 1.5 times the size of so.
Is that at Skywalker Ranch, I would assume?
No, some collector has it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It goes for a lot of money. I mean, 6 figures. What else? No, I think I had something in mind, but it can't slip me right now.
I do have one last question for you. I think all of us, when we hear Skywalker Ranch, we have no idea what that means.
Okay.
Could you describe it, whether it's your last visit or your first visit? It's his house, right? But like, what is Skywalker Ranch like when you visit?
It's not his house. It's the headquarters. I'm not sure if it's still the headquarters where they're down in LA, but a little north of, you go across the Golden Gate Bridge in San Anselmo. You go up, head north on the interstate till you get to Lucas Valley Road, and that's just by coincidence. It wasn't named that afterwards. And there's a very nondescript gate, metal gate with pillars and stuff, and that's Lucas Ranch, Skywalker Ranch. And when I was there the last time, which has been quite a while actually, but there are 2 buildings there. One beautiful, almost lodge-like thing where the offices are at the time, and we would go there to get approvals for product. Then there's another building, which I'll call a barn, but it's much more than a barn. And all the props are in there. Like you walk in there and there are 7 or 8 C-3POs standing in the corner, full size. And then they have one, it's a huge building. And they have another place where there's racks that have Millennium Falcons from this big to this big. And they'd use, and every C3 or R2D2 unit sitting there, costumes, parts, everything. And so it's really a neat place to go. Of course, very hard to get into. But Lucas we didn't deal a lot one-on-one with George Lucas. I probably met him 4 or 5 times in my career there, but the people there, we worked with them so much, became friends with them, and they were very, very good to deal with. and some licenses are a little tougher than others, but they were, they didn't know what they had either. At the time, they had no idea the impact of this movie, and it was it was a great time, and we were all. It's kind of that's what I'm kind of known for now. Not that I get recognized or anything, but it was a marvelous time to be at Kenner, and it was actually a time, let's see, when was it? Early 80s, where we didn't make any Star Wars toys. The 3 movies had done, and that was all he was going to do, and the sales had plummeted, and everybody thought it was done. So it's just a phenomenon that'll probably never happen again, especially because we don't, movies are a whole new format now with Netflix and stuff. So, but if you go to Netflix and go to the Toys That Made Us, the first episode is Star Wars. And that tells you a lot about it. And then they're doing another one now that's not out yet. And there's a DVD available. It's called Plastic Galaxy, which is a lot about Kenner and Kenner's involvement in doing Star Wars and that. So those are 2 really good resources if you just want to learn something, So, and of course, there's me, but you got me, so you don't.
That's right. We got you, Tom. All right. Well, as I look on my wall here, I do have one more vehicle question.
Okay.
So I have the classic land speeder, which was one of my favorite ones, and apparently on the set that actually had tires and wheels, and to make it look like it floated, they put Vaseline on the film or something. And I just recently saw something where that was something George Lucas was never happy with. So when they did, the revamped director's cut or whatever, they made it look, in my mind, worse. I thought the Vaseline, kind of that, fuzzy, blurry look as it went across the desert was iconic in my mind. But any thoughts on that vehicle design? Because if you think a little poor old R2-D2, they had to lay him on his back on the back. Like it wasn't meant for more than 2 people, like
there
was okay.
There's a Pontiac concept car from the 50s. And I think it was like, I can picture it in my mind, but I don't remember the name of it. It was, I think, like a Pontiac version of this 53 Corvette. And it has a grill on it that really reminds me a lot of the...
Was it the Banshee? I know what you're talking about. I bet I can find a picture of it somewhere.
The blue car?
Yeah.
Exactly. I kind of thought that, although I don't know for a fact, but I kind of thought that was one of the inspirations for the land speeder, because it always reminded me of it.
Yeah, that's one of the Motorama cars.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Because it also had a canopy glass top, didn't it? Like a single one, though.
Yeah, I remember. I wonder if there's a guy in Detroit that owns all the, or used
Joe
to.
Bortz. He's been on the podcast.
Oh yeah, he's still around? Is he still around?
He is. They just did a special showing of the Peterson of his collection.
Oh, did they? Yeah. It's fun because when I go to Los Angeles, I have 2 sons in LA, but one is in the movie business and won an Oscar, I must say.
Tell us what he won an Oscar for.
He won an Oscar for a short film he conceived and directed for Disney called Feast. It was the short on the front end of Big Hero 6. And it's already been almost 10 years ago, believe it or not. He's doing a movie. He's doing Magic the Gathering right now, which is a card game he's doing that for Netflix at the moment. But anyway, he lives right a half a block off of Laurel Canyon Drive, which is incidentally where all the big bands of the 60s, like Crosby, Stills and Nash and Jackson Browne, they all lived around there. But all I need to do is go south on Laurel Canyon, up over the mountain and back down. I'm at the Peterson Museum. So whenever I get out there, I try to go to check it out. So it's a neat place. Very neat place.
It is. I was there last year, and Bruce Meyer has been on the podcast three or 4 times now. So, all right. Well, let's end up with 2 pictures of cars here. I just realized there's 2 cars we haven't talked about. The sketch you did looks like a swoopy prototype for fun, and then the AC Cobra. So it's the swoopy one. Was that one just for fun?
Is it blue? The blue one?
Yeah.
That was a demo that I did for a class on. That's some of the program called Procreate, and it's only available for iPads, but it's only $10, and it is magic. You can do so much fun stuff with it. What was the other one?
The red AC Cobra, beautiful.
Oh, that's Ellis's car.
Oh, that's Ellis. Okay, that's our mutual friend who has about 20 cars. Great collector, great friend. All right, so that's Ellis's. That's a car craft. It's aluminum bodied.
AC. It's plastic body. It's an AC.
Oh, it's plastic.
I think it's plastic. Yeah, it's an AC Cobra.
But it's one of the 83 early 80s reproduction that's done really nice, right?
Yeah, very nice. Very fun to drive. I get to drive all his cars, which is fun. Yeah, so that was actually, he has a lot of my paintings of his cars in his office, along with another guy, Russ Brandenburg, who unfortunately passed away. But Ellis has all of the paintings of all his cars. So, have you had Ellis on your show?
No, I should probably do that.
Oh yeah. Before he sells everything.
yeah. Well, Tom, I appreciate you being on the Collector Car Podcast to talk about Star Wars vehicle design, and we're looking forward to having you back on to talk about the Indy 500. Okay.
I'll be there. Thanks. Good seeing you again.